So it turns out burnout's a thing. I knew I hadn't posted a video for a while, but when I looked and found out it was rapidly approaching a year, I was a little surprised. So what happened? Well, a year ago, my son was newly diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. We were struggling to learn how to cope with it, and my business was failing. I've wanted for years to make this, YouTube, my main income, and while I held some pretty serious doubts as to how feasible that was for what is, let's face it, a very niche channel, it seemed like it was worth a try. So I made the decision to push out content as often as I possibly could without letting the standards drop noticeably. So for 46 days, I threw myself into making content. I pushed out a long-form video every single day. There were some shorts as well, and a bunch of instructional videos for members of the channel only. Let's look at what happened. I'm going to show you a few graphs. The period we actually care about is the 21st of August to the 4th of October, but to make the graphs easier to visualise and to give a little context for what it looked like both before and after the video everyday period, I've added a few days at each end. So firstly, let's look at views. Those 46 videos got 2,568,013 impressions and 197,894 views. That means that out of the 2.5 million people that YouTube offered the video to, 5.2% of them chose to actually click through and watch it. That is not considered bad, but it's definitely at the lower end of what is considered okay. It's certainly nothing to write home about. The thing that interests me more than the raw figures is the overall pattern of the data. You can see very clearly that we started with a bang. The very first of the daily videos, published on the 21st of August, was the most popular in the entire period. There were just over 10,000 views on that day, but then we settled into a pattern of every day getting roughly between 3,000 and 6,000 views. Over the whole period, that stays steady. So based on nothing more than views, it would seem that publishing daily simply moved the baseline upwards, without changing the fact that it was essentially a flat line. To give a little context, the same period 1 year earlier, when I wasn't putting out daily videos, had a daily average views of around 1,000. So the question is, what impact did that increased baseline have on the revenue of the channel? Was it enough to live on? Clearly, based on the fact that I didn't carry on and now have a pretty cool job, you already know the answer to that. But let's look at the figures anyway. Here's a graph of revenue from the channel for the exact same period. You can see that over those 59 days of researching, scripting, recording, editing and publishing a long-form video every single day, I earned $723.46. That is $3.35 for every 1,000 views. Across YouTube as a whole, that's pretty poor. But for sports-related channels, which apparently this is, it's actually not bad. The obvious conclusion here is that channels like this simply don't attract advertisers the way some other subjects do. But again, those are just raw figures. Let's look at that in the context of my life. As you probably know, and if you didn't know, you can probably guess from my accent, I live in the UK. And so that $723.46 is actually £568.15 to me, or £9.64 a day. The UK minimum wage for someone over the age of 21 is £11.44 per hour, meaning that as long as I was able to research, script, record, edit, publish and then respond to comments on a video in under 50 minutes, I was officially earning the minimum wage. I don't think it will come as a surprise to you to hear that I couldn't do that. So at the end of the period in question, I was in a situation where it was essentially a full-time job. The figures had all very rapidly plateaued, and I was earning roughly 1/12 of what I needed to earn in order to survive. And to make matters even worse, if you look at the breakdown of revenue for the period by video, you can very clearly see that the vast majority of the money I earned came from one single video. There was absolutely no sign that keeping the daily videos up would significantly increase my ability to survive. And if the next period didn't have one of those surprisingly successful standout videos, then my revenue would actually be significantly lower. So that's the raw data, the quantitative view, if you like. Let's have a bit of a chat about why this might be the case. For me, this channel has always been about sharing something I love with other people around the world who also love it. But it's increasingly clear that that's not where success on YouTube lies for channels like mine. Over the years, I've experimented with different types of videos, and with a couple of outliers that don't seem to fit any trends at all, the basic fact is that being negative about something is always more successful than being positive. When I make a video ranting about how I think something is terrible, it gets a lot more engagement than when I share something I think is fascinating, or just cool. Reacting to mediocre fighters in a field somewhere and slating them for having low levels of skill gets a lot more views than your average Stories of Greatness video. The more extreme I can be when I slate a martial art, the more success I will have. And to be honest, that's not really what I want to do. I might think that some martial arts are useless for actual fighting, but I'm grown up enough and smart enough and have been around for long enough to know that pure fighting is not what a lot of people are looking for. On a personal level, I'm never happier than when I'm lying on the mats in a puddle of what is hopefully mainly my own sweat, trying to work out if I can even stand up for the inevitable group photo at the end of a brutal jiu-jitsu session. But most people aren't into that, and if they were, I probably wouldn't be. So I can see why so many channels of a similar nature have started to slide down the very slippery slope of chasing engagement in order to try and survive. Why they've fallen victim to the very enticing rage bait videos designed to stir up angry responses. But that's not what I want to do. I'm proudly woke. I'm a believer in the scientific process and basing opinions on actual evidence rather than just what feels nice and tingly inside. I'm pro-LGBT, a vocal supporter of women's rights, and I utterly reject extremist views of any nature. I'm 100% opposed to Russian expansionism in Ukraine and the Israeli genocide in Palestine. I absolutely 100% believe in the idea of live and let live, and basing my personal morals on being kind first and foremost. But that is clearly not a recipe for financial success here on YouTube. But the not quite a year I've had off has shown me that I'm not really ready to put this YouTube thing to one side for good just yet. I'm just not really sure how it's going to go forward. I guess you'll just have to wait and see. Fight team.